At the meeting, that's when I kind of really understood what Entr Tech was doing and what tech sales really was. Within 7 or 8 months, I went on to becoming an account manager. Switching careers is about much more than just switching jobs. I think the biggest challenge for anyone that's breaking into a new industry is...
Welcome back to another episode of Entr Tech. Today I've got Mishell Zeeshan on the podcast, which is just amazing. An ex-Entr Tech alumni. She worked in tech sales for over 3 years and now is one of our mentors and coaches on our program. Super excited to have you on, Mishell, and talk about her early beginnings from being a student to working in tech sales and healthcare. So Mishell, we'll get into it. Super excited to have you here in London. How have you been?
I've been very well, thank you, and super excited to be here.
Fantastic. So take us back to, I guess, how you heard about tech sales. As a student, tech sales is quite a weird, I guess, path or thing to understand. So
100%. Especially if you're not in the tech field. And I noticed that I was a psychology student, and especially, I don't know how it was in the rest of Europe or the rest of the UK especially, but in Norway, I hadn't heard anything about that. And I don't think we're so good at showing students over there all the different paths you can take. So it's quite... by chance that I discovered Entr Tech. I was very interested in the tech space, and I wanted to get into it. I wanted to understand it, but I wanted to find my place in tech. So being, a psychology student, working with people, being interested in people, and wanting to solve problems, I just started to look around the internet, and then I still remember, I was sitting at home, just scrolling on TikTok, and I found, I came over Entr Tech, and I just started looking, and I'd looked at other different boot camps before, but so this one was kind of like the one, you save it, and then you're like, I'll get back to it later, I'll see. So that's what I did, but then I actually, looked into it, and what I did was I booked the meeting with you, and I have to admit, at the meeting, that's when I kind of really understood what Entr Tech was doing and what tech sales really was.
Amazing. Yeah. And what made you think about sales or the sales side of tech? Did you even know about tech sales at all? And
Never before. I hadn't even considered sales in general. So for me, when we spoke about it the first time, I was a bit like, okay, this is interesting, but at the same time, sales can be a bit daunting if you haven't heard about it before and you're not familiar with what tech sales and sales really is. And you think about, the typical, whatever we know about, what we think about sales, the stereotypical stuff.
Sure.
But then when we sat down and we had the conversation, I immediately was like, after the call, I was like, this feels very much aligned with the path that I want to take, but also aligned with who I am and what I can bring into the tech space. So it was very new, but it was surprisingly the path that it was for me.
Amazing. And you're based in Oslo, correct?
Yes.
So what's the tech scene like in Oslo?
Oh, it's growing. It's definitely growing. It's definitely been growing the last years. And, even when I started, it started really blooming, people getting into it more and more. But I would love to see more entrepreneurs in Norway actually taking the leap of faith and going about it. Yeah.
Epic. And I love the fact you're one of our international students.
Yeah.
Love it. You're our first student in Norway, in Oslo, which is just amazing, in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
So that was 3 or 4 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find the program when you came on? What was it that really stood out to you about Entr Tech to come on, and how did you find the whole journey?
First, it's definitely... For me personally, it was the mentoring. It was the mentorship. It was the coaching. It was the one-on-one that I got to have with you. That was super valuable. And I think, feeling supported every single step of the way, knowing that there is someone that I can turn to if, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know quite what I was getting myself into, even though we had laid the groundwork and I knew what an SDR was. I knew what it took to succeed in sales. But when it's as new as it was golden to have the mentorship that I had. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And tell me about the interview experience, because it's quite daunting for a lot of people when they break into
Yes.
technology for the first time in an interview. How did you find that whole process?
So the interviewing process that I went through,
Yeah.
I'm going to be completely honest. I was in the middle of my psychology, my bachelor's degree. So I completed the course, Entr Tech, and then I had my exams. So I had to kind of put a pin in it. And what I found was that it took a bit time to understand the logic of the interviews and really understand what is it that they're looking for. I was very young, and having, coming from a background where you don't necessarily have that corporate experience. You haven't been in the rooms that you're put into before. It can be very unfamiliar. So I think having someone that can support you through that is key, really, because it's a matter of like really just understanding what goes on, why you're here, what they're looking for. So I think that was what was my experience, at least.
Nice,
yeah.
nice. And I remember getting messages from the team saying what a great hire you were, and being like, "Wow, that's so cool." What was it like joining, a tech firm in Oslo? What was the first experiences like? Obviously, pretty cool that you were doing this alongside your studies.
Yes.
I could tell you're super driven to support, I think, your family, and you're really motivated. But yeah, what was the whole experience like, and what was motivating you through that initial 6 months?
It was amazing. I was super, super lucky, first of all, with the company that I landed with. And I remember we had a lot of conversations about this. You told me a lot about what are the things that I should be looking for when going for a company, how it should align, it needs to be a good fit, both for me and the company. So I think that knowledge really helped me in choosing and landing a company, which was great. I landed with an HR tech company, so that was the first industry that I went into. I had never, I didn't even know what that was. So I went into it, and the company was great. It was a Swedish company, and we were a small team in Norway, and I ended up in a team where I met the most talented people I've ever met, the most genuine, caring, amazing people that I still keep in touch with to this day, and that I still look up to this day. So I feel I was super, super lucky in that sense. But yeah, I also remember getting into the sales team and, explaining to them, yeah, I did this tech course, like Entr Tech, SDR course, and now I'm here and I'm studying on the side. They were like, we've never heard about this stuff. Like, what is it? Like, and why are you doing it? And so it was quite new for them too. And I feel like they were very, as I said, it's not maybe the biggest scene in Norway. Maybe I'm not, at least at that time, having these kinds of like programs or boot camps where you train salespeople. So it was positive feedback, definitely, but they also thought it was super cool, coming from a background like that. So all in all, super cool experience.
Amazing. And tell me about, I guess, how that role evolved from SDR to, I believe, account manager. So how was that journey, I guess, your first couple of years working in tech?
It went by really, really fast. And I remember you said it as well, like the path to progression is really quick. And it all depends. Like I tell this to the other students as well, that I don't consider myself necessarily special when it came to, doing sales and being in sales. I'd never done it before. It was very new. But I had an amazing team. I had an amazing, I wanted to learn as much as possible. I had Entr Tech. So within 7 or 8 months, I went on to becoming an account manager. And then I did that for a while. And that was a very steep learning curve as well. But I think what really surprised me was the fact that after being an SDR or a BDR and then becoming an account manager, the jump from the BDR to account manager wasn't that hard as it was to break into my first role. So I'd say that was the most difficult thing. But the one thing that I was super surprised by was how many recruiters were reaching out. I wasn't even actively looking. I was looking, but I wasn't putting in the most effort. And the recruiters were the one that were, reaching out. And even when I was working in the company and just joined the company, I had recruiters reaching out. So I think that was the thing that surprised me the most, the amount of need it is. And how, once you have your foot in the industry, it's just up from there.
Agreed. I always think that I say to everyone, the hardest thing is breaking in once you're in the industry and you have that 6 months experience or whatever it is. Like a lot of recruiters are going to come at you and really want to hire you, which is great. Talk to me about the lifestyle of working in tech sales. I mean, like the benefits. What was the biggest change for you from, I guess, working part-time or being a student? What was the biggest benefits for you that you found in tech sales?
Oh, the biggest benefits. I feel like definitely the fact that I was able to branch out into new territory and build myself within a different industry simultaneously as getting my psychology degree. I was, studying 100% and I was working 100% as well. I was very fortunate in that sense that I was able to, have, do my uni work in the evening. And I think the biggest thing that I noticed was the amount of opportunities that opened up. I think switching into and pivoting into tech sales wasn't just for me personally, that I switched jobs or that I just landed a job that paid really well and I essentially didn't need to study anymore if I didn't want to. It gave me the freedom to choose. It gave me the possibilities to, the possibilities of having different paths to tap into if I would like that.
Yeah. So I guess it's the freedom to make your own choices and I guess potentially even the earning potential, but also the location freedom to work hybrid or do what you wanted, I guess. Mm-hmm. Great. In going into the work you're doing with Entr Tech now, I've sat on this sofa with so many students and they've said how Mishell's been amazing and such big support, which is just honestly insane. And thank you for that. What do you see as the biggest help you give to the students and the biggest struggles maybe they face day to day? What would you say lots of people that are breaking into tech sales that are listening to this podcast can relate to? Like, what are the biggest challenges you'd say?
I think the biggest challenge for anyone that's breaking into a new industry is, where do I even start? Okay, I want to do this. Where do I go from here? And it can be very scary to trust someone that you don't know. You sign up for this boot camp and there are so many people out there that are like, oh, buy my course, do this, da, da, da. So I think the biggest thing is not knowing where to go. And what I see with students is that all of them have the motivation. All of them want to do it, want to achieve it, want to eventually, land a job, be in tech sales and exceed in their career. But then it's a matter of like, what doors do I knock on and how do I do it? And I think also the how is really important, because every industry has its own rules, right? I was speaking to one student this week, and he was into cinematography before, and he said the same thing. Like, there are rules, there are ways of doing things and a lingo, and you're not familiar with these things. So helping the students becoming familiar with what goes on in these rooms, what is it what is this industry? That's kind of the biggest thing. But also on a personal level, I get to connect with the students on a personal level, and just as I said before, switching careers is about much more than just switching jobs and landing a new job. It can mean so much for your family, yourself, your day-to-day, how you relate to yourself. So I've met people who never in a million years thought they could be sitting in, or not sitting in, but would be given the chance to sit in client-facing roles and solve problems, and they always knew that this is what I'm good at. So helping them, believing in themselves, but also making a couple of changes, adjusting some. Sometimes we need to work on how you relate to yourself, your self-image, or the story that you keep telling yourself. So we work a lot on that level as well. So I think there are many things.
No, I love it. I think the way I see Entr Tech as a boot camp and a full, I guess, service is the human element, and people like yourselves that give that one-on-one time and looking at the human and emotional, I guess, connection, and how they're going to, I guess, become high performers in any environment. So I'd love to ask you as well about your new training as well in terms of Hintsa, because that was something you told me about, and it was super interesting when I was looking at it. So tell me about that if you can. It's a bit of a curveball to go onto, but super interested.
Yeah. So working with, doing this since last year, I felt like I grew so much as a person, as well as, it gives me so much to be able to help or give back to the community, but also to other people. I think as people, we learn so much from each other, and every time I sit down with a student, I have these like breakthroughs in my mind, like light bulbs going off. So I love it, and I think we can learn so much from each other. But I definitely do see that, as I said before, the work that we do is not only on the professional level. So there is a genuine need for someone, for a support, and for someone that can help you reach the level that you want to reach. And, obviously, I am on the path to become a psychologist. So psychology has always been a very, very big passion, and it just made sense to Hintsa Performance became that bridge kind of, and it really, I saw how that would allow me to help the students and our clients better, and if I, as someone that is a mental health professional, I always want to have the tools to be able to help better, and understand the needs of the person in front of me better. So that was the reason that I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And I didn't know about it before, but someone mentioned that to me, and they were like, you should look into that. And I did, and I was like, oh, this is super cool. So I just applied, and now we're doing it.
Looks super cool. And there's like Formula One teams and stuff get coached on that sort of principle, which is really nice to hear. What would you say the students wise then, when they're applying to roles or when they're in that position outside of the industry where you meet them? What do you think are the biggest things holding them back in terms of like the challenges that you help them with? Would you say it's self-belief, or are there other things that you think? Obviously understanding the lingo and how maybe the back doors work in the tech industry to get the job. What would you say the biggest challenges are for them?
I think, generally speaking, the biggest challenge would be to know what to say when you're applying for an SDR role. Like, if you never have known about sales before, an SDR, I've had students that have tried to break into tech for a long time, and they've even, gotten interviews and sat in interviews, and what they've told me is like, it's like maneuvering a car blindly, like in the dark, because you don't really know what you're applying for, so you don't really know what an SDR is. So I think, generally speaking, is establishing what this industry is, what an SDR does. Everyone is so different. Everyone has their own sets of beliefs that hold them back. As I said before, the way you relate to yourself, the picture you have always painted of yourself or are painting of yourself right now, it's different from each student. And I notice how the more I sit down with people, the more I realize how complex we are and how different we are. And we can be very similar as well, but every person needs their own, distinct mentoring or coaching, you could say.
Great stuff. And in terms of like success stories, I'm going to put you on the spot now, but is there any you don't have to mention the person, but anything in particular that stood out to you in terms of like transformations where people have gone from a certain industry or really struggled to land a role, but then you've helped them and they've finally got to where they've got to? Is there anyone you can think of?
There are many, and there have been several moments where I've sat down and I've had to kind of it sounds very stupid, but it sounds very stupid, but when I am a very emotional person, so when I see that someone finally made that breakthrough, or they realized something about themselves, or they just nailed that interview and they landed that job, to me that feeling is priceless. And there have been so many students who've struggled. Can I mention specific problem? Yeah. Okay. So, for example, students that have struggled with some sort of diagnosis that might have held them back in some aspects, not personally, but in terms of how other people relate to them and the chances that they are given. And then seeing how quickly they excel and seeing how they just how do you say it in English? Flourish?
Flourish, yeah.
Flourish,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Seeing how quickly they flourish.
Yeah.
That's priceless. And also just seeing how, I remember there was students that, a student that came from a completely nothing to do with tech industry, very, can I say which background? Yeah, like a firefighter background, and never been in the corporate environment, done that for the whole of his life, the whole of his life. Yeah, his whole life, and just seeing how, because of how determined he was, because of he had a goal and he was determined to reach that goal, and it was just a matter of instilling that confidence in the sense of like, you can do it, you have the tools, and forget that you've been in this environment. This is actually your strength. Seeing that, or having super meaningful conversations with individuals that are so reflected on who they are, have been, want to become, and yeah, it's super amazing.
Love it. In terms of, I guess, going forward, and I guess what excites you most about, I guess, the world of technology and how it's advancing, but also coaching? What excites you the most about the future and I guess your role at Entr Tech as well?
I think what excites me is, it's a vast space. It's growing rapidly, and it's just gonna grow. So I think, new jobs, so much exciting stuff happening, and I think now is the time to get into tech. Obviously, AI, and there are so many different discussions around that, but definitely get into tech sales.
Amazing. Mishell, thanks so much for coming on. You've helped so many people so far, and hopefully many more to continue. So thank you for coming on. And where's the best place for people to reach out? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
LinkedIn.
We'll link in your LinkedIn down below, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.